I think I read somewhere in a book on orchids when I was doing my initial research that orchids appear in every colour apart from black, and they don't appear in every colour. So that was my sort of grounding. I thought, well, what's a really rare orchid? There'd be a black one and a rainbow orchid that's got every colour. It's set in the 1920s, and that was that came about because of my interest in silent film. I just thought that's an amazing age, the 20s, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. So it's set in the 20s, and it's the main character is called Julius Chancer, and he's the assistant to an historical researcher called Sir Alfred Catesby Gray. And put very simply, it's the search for this mythical orchid. Has been mentioned in a couple of ancient sources. It appears on a stone tablet that comes from ancient India, and it's also been mentioned by a Greek philosopher called Theophrastus, who got sent samples of plants and herbs by Alexander the Great while he was on campaign. Through Afghanistan and into northern India, they get sent back to Greece, where Theophrastus was at the Lyceum. And this is all fictional, of course. I've got him being sent this rainbow orchid that Alexander's botanists discovered on their travels. So it's a kind of mentioned in ancient literature, and in order to help a chap called Lord Lawrence win a bet he made while under the influence of alcohol and possibly something else. And by that I mean by something else I mean his drinks were spiked. Julius Chancer agrees to go to India and help him or see if they can find this fabled rainbow orchid. Julius and Lily were the first two characters I came up with, and I did the sketchbook where I drew them, so I knew I wanted those two. I'm not sure I don't think they had names. I don't think I had the names first. I can't remember actually, but certainly a male lead and a female lead I wanted, so they were developed at the same time.
And then you started developing all your other characters. There's Evelyn, who's the villainess. Really, she's.
Oh yes.
Yes, yeah. Yes, and in Pickle, William Pickle, who he has an important part in this story, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, the story wouldn't happen if it wasn't for him, really. I mean, he's a newspaper reporter, and if there is no news happening for him to report, which he doesn't really like doing, that's a bit dull, he likes to stir up some news from perhaps a few basic things that are happening. He'll want the story to be more exciting, so he'll actually get in there and stir up a bit of trouble in order to make the story more interesting. So it's him doing that sets off the whole thing. He's the catalyst for the Rainbow Orchid happening. Really, actually, I quite like him. He's a bit devious. He's not really a villain. He's got some shades of grey that I'm very pleased with that have come out.
Mm-hmm. And you got a real mysterious character here called Grope.
Urquhart Grope, yes.
And we only know a little bit about him.
Well, Urquhart Grope is the main villain. Evelyn Crow is his henchwoman.
Yes.
I call her his dark angel, and she's highly intelligent and scheming. I don't know if she's more intelligent than Grope himself, but he's almost like a mobster. He's got fingers in all kinds of pies. He's criminal underground type character. And he actually, I was slightly shocked to see when I sketched him and started drawing him, I thought, oh, he looks a bit like my granddad, which wasn't intentional, but every time I see him, I think he looks a bit like my granddad. Although my granddad wasn't a large, rotund chap like he is.
And then you have, when Lily comes over to Great Britain, she's accompanied by her publicist,
Yep.
Nathaniel, and he adds We had some problems for Julius along the way, but that adds a lot of color for the story, I think.
Yeah, originally he was my bumbling idiot character, which every good comic needs, I suppose. But I did very quickly think that perhaps was a bit shallow. Things may change for him a bit. My other problem with him is that, and this goes on to perhaps linked a bit with the writing, is writing comedy, the funny bits, is something I find quite difficult. Mainly because my favourite kind of comedy is slapstick, which comes from my love of silent films, or maybe I love slapstick and that's what led me to loving silent films, I'm not sure. But seeing Chaplin and Buster Keaton and all that, yeah, there's nothing funnier than the sort of physical comedy. My problem is that Hergé's Tintin, who is a huge influence on the Rainbow Orchid, that's his kind of staple of comedy as well, is physical slapstick. Captain Haddock's always bumping into things, falling over. The Thompson twins are the same. And he just does it so brilliantly. And I'm already influenced by Tintin graphically, but I separately genuinely love slapstick from a separate source. I mean, I probably maybe Tintin nurtured that love in me as well. In fact, now I think about it, maybe that probably is. And the same. Well, Asterix is less physical comedy, I guess. I don't want to make it too much like Tintin, so I've been trying to avoid too much slapstick, which goes against my nature. But I actually may relent, because I've just got to try and think of some different jokes, because Hergé's used so many of my favourite physical gags that I've got to try and avoid those and think up new ones. But it's difficult. I don't want to make it too much like Tintin, so that's an interesting challenge. I've tried to use a different kind of comedy sometimes, and sometimes I'll forget it, read it and laugh, and sometimes I'll read it and think that's not funny. But then I've read it so many times that I can't really be objective about it anymore anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'd never seen it as a children's comic, but I wanted it to be safe for children. And when I started Rainbow Orchid in 1997, from what I remember anyway, a lot of comics were going through there for mature readers phase, so everything was dark and gritty and violent. I'm sure there were children's comics around as well, but I wanted an adventure story that would be fantastic for a 12-year-old as well as an 82-year-old.
You've been a self-publisher for so long. How's your experience been so far working with a publishing company?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, part of the reason I dipped my toe into perhaps looking into becoming a comic artist, and realised I didn't really like the fact that I'd be doing, the actual work involved, the amount of work involved I wouldn't be able to control. So I am a bit of a control freak about my work. And that's the attraction of self-publishing, is you do everything yourself. And in fact, the only thing I haven't been able to do in self-publishing is do my own printing. And quite often I've been disappointed with the printing of various things. There are quite a few problems with the black and white edition of Rainbow Orchid that were out of my control, you see. So every time something like that happens, it reinforces my paranoia in letting things go. So having a big publisher has been quite a big step for me. But it's been great, actually. Egmont have been... I possibly thought there'd be more... I'd have to give up more things than I have. No, they've been brilliant to work with. I couldn't be happier with the way it's gone. I mean, obviously behind the scenes there's been discussion about various things, and they've convinced me about some things, and I've convinced them about some things, and that's how it should be. And I'm definitely open to... I mean, Egmont are the experienced people in publishing, so I'm definitely open to what they've got to say about things, and it's been a learning experience. But then they've actually said this to me. I'm the author of the book. I have to be happy with the book that's going out with my name on it. So it's great to hear that as well, and to know. I think we've got a very nice 50-50 relationship. It's still early on in its development, but
Well,
so
good to
far
hear.
everything's
Good to
good.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.